You are listening to Church Talk with Isaac.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Isaac Watson with another episode for you. Listen, you all are in a great treat that we have today. This is a topic, again, because we're Church Talk with Isaac, we deal with all things church related, but we also deal with things that just deals with being a believer, being people, being human, and things that people need. And I want to come today with a topic that I think you all will benefit from because we all need them. Hopefully we all have them. But the topic today is help. My best friend is not a good friend. And I think this is a topic that we all have experienced in one point or another, where we've had friendships and those friendships might have seemed one-sided, or it may have seemed as if maybe you were not the one that was a good friend. Maybe you faced betrayal. Maybe you faced just different things in your life that changed the dynamics of your relationship. And today, I actually have a good friend of mine that's coming on this show with me, that's coming on this episode with me. His name is Corey Person. He's a pastor. He actually pastors a church in I was going to say Park Forest. That's where my church is. He pastors a church in Chicago Heights, Illinois. The name of his church is Presence Church. And we've been friends for a good while now, Corey, right?
Yeah, it's been about almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years. And from the time that we met until now, our friendship has been so solid. Like, he's probably been one of the most solid friends, definitely one of my best friends and closest friends throughout that time span. As a matter of fact, I actually mentioned Corey on one of my previous podcasts with me and Brittany, my wife Brittany, and I mentioned how Corey was the one who encouraged me to stop playing games.
I do remember that. I forgot about that.
He encouraged me to stop playing games and to pursue Brittany. Yeah. So he was my best man in my wedding as well. Because we were close, and also because he played a big part in us being together. So friends are very important. So we're just going to take some time and just kind of dialogue just through this episode, and hopefully you all will get something from this. So I want to ask you a question, Corey. First and foremost, how would you define friendship?
Well, I think this is a really good topic. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
I think how I define friendship is so funny. I think everybody has a personal definition. And I think when we think about friendship, I think everybody is going to personally say, what is a friend to me? That may not necessarily be the Webster dictionary of a friend. But for me, when I think of a friend, I think of someone who is trustworthy, someone who is consistent. I think consistency is a real big deal for me. And consistency doesn't mean that, you're not going to have moments when things change, but as things change, the person adjusts life and they're consistent with you through all those changes. So to me, that's a good definition for me of friendship is, I would say, consistency, trustworthiness, and then I guess also the last one would be honesty and transparency. I think you need a friend, somebody who would be truthful, also loving, but truthful. And so sometimes we just need those people that can sharpen us. So I think those would be my three.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything that you just said. I think what you gave is a solid explanation, a solid definition of what friendship is. I would probably add to that with friendship, there has to be a mutual connection.
Yep.
There has to be a mutual bond. What I've seen sometimes is people try to force friendships.
Yes.
And a lot of times it just doesn't work. You can't force your friendships. And I think that there has to be some type of connection there, something that you have in common, something that draws you together. So that was absolutely great. Like, the things that you just said and explained are all things that, even in this, Corey, all things that will be tested.
Yeah.
in friendships
That's
as
true.
well.
I like what you said, even with that last piece when you said a mutual connection. I think sometimes the mutual connection, I've seen that with friends that I know and family members that I know, where especially like in church settings, sometimes because we just, we want to connect with other believers and we want to, be around. Sometimes you almost would try to make you be friends. Like, let's say if you're in a smaller church or if you're in a larger church and you're around people that are saved, just because they're saved, it's almost like you just want to make yourself be friends. But sometimes that doesn't work. What I've also find for my life is that a lot of my closest friends are opposites of me. And so I find that with me a lot. That's one of my dynamics, is that my closer friends that are like in my inner circle, they happen to be opposite of me. Now, as I go down the list, I have friends that, we're a little more alike in personality, but my closest friends are actually opposite, you know what I mean, of me in terms of personality, in terms of that. And I think that's the draw.
Yeah.
I think that's the initial draw.
Yeah. And I would even say that about us.
Yeah, that's us.
That in a lot of ways,
that's us.
A lot of ways we are very opposite. I mean, we're the same when it comes to some passions, and we can laugh and have fun and all of that good stuff. But just the way that we're built.
Yeah. Totally different.
Completely different. Completely different.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I'm more heady in my approach to things. Corey he actually has ways that he categorizes them. He talks about people who go ahead.
I always say that the facts people and the fillers, we're a little different. Yeah, so I'm kind of 50-50. I'm 50%, emotional and can connect on the emotional side, and then I'm 50% heady, So I think it's a good balance. I think me and Isaac could talk about a conversation, and if he missed the feeling part of it, I'd be like, well, that's probably how they felt. You know what I mean? So I'll put that in there. Or I could be talking and he'll be like, hey, well, that was good how they felt, but this is actually what happened. So it's a good balance. And I think it helps. I think that what happens in good friendships is that usually you have a common core base that you kind of mutually have a common ground on, and then you're free to still be unapologetically you, but you just have a good common base, and that's what kind of brings you guys back to a common base. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing that I would probably say about friends is sometimes they take work in order in because of those differences, because sometimes if you don't understand the people that you're in relationship with, they can end in arguments. People, you can get offended. Offense can be very strong when you have people in the same room.
That's true. That
have different opinions, different approaches, different mindsets. They see the world differently. And because of that, I think that when God arranges certain relationships and friendships, it just takes work in order to make sure that you're constantly making an effort to understand the person that you're friends with, and I don't think that makes you weak or anything like that. But anybody can say that they're a friend, but good friends always try to live and interact from a place of understanding, where they try to understand what where the person's coming from, even if they don't necessarily agree with the perspective. And I can say that about me and Corey. There's been sometimes we'll be in a conversation about something and we just leave like we just don't agree. That's fine. That's okay. All right, next, let's move on.
We just gonna put this one in the parking lot. But you're allowed to get it out. You're allowed to say it. I want to comment on what you said when you were talking about the work. I kind of want to speak to just some of the mechanics, I guess, of my perspective of the work. I think when you're friends, your workload changes over time. I think when you're friends, your workload changes, and what I mean by that is I can take like me and Isaac's friendship. Like when we first got cool, I mean Isaac wasn't married yet, I was still married, so there was a certain level of flexibility and freedom he may have had that I didn't have. You know what I mean? I remember him joking, laughing when I got to get the kids and do different things. He's like, "Oh my God, why you gotta do all that?" Now I can't wait. I couldn't wait to throw all that back in his face. Once he got married. But I think being able to manage the mechanics of the work that's required for you to have a healthy friendship, because you still have to be, especially if you're married, you still gotta have, that 100% that you're giving to your family. And then you still gotta be able to manage the few friends that you have and what that work looks like. And so I can say for us, and just for even my other friends, there's been seasons where one friendship may have needed a little more time. I have friends who I talk to them every morning at 7 a.m. That was our routine. Then I have other friends that's not what we do. That friendship doesn't necessarily, that's not the work needed for that friendship. The other friendship may be one where, we may talk or get together every other 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? And we talk, and when we talk, we good. We talk like, that works for us. So I think just when you talk about the work, I think it's not one shoe fits all,
right.
But I definitely think people have to manage that, because that's how people fall out. That's how people start saying, man, you're acting funny, something changed. I think being open about, hey, now we got to switch to this because now I'm doing this. I think that's what happened with one of my friends who we ended up talking kind of in the morning. We used to talk sporadically, but as my workload with the church picked up, I remember having to kind of catch them in the morning. And so that became an easier routine for us to stay connected. So it's just things like that. I don't want to take up too much.
No.
Those are some examples of just the work that it takes to put in.
Yeah, it definitely takes work. And another angle of that is, as far as like the work of a relationship or the work of a friendship is concerned, I've seen so many friendships end because they were not afraid, because they were afraid to have hard conversations with them.
Oh yeah.
I've seen it where either friendships are just coasting, and what tends to happen when there are like issues in the relationship that are not spoken about, what'll happen is when you try to cruise over it and parade over it, is now you're no longer even being genuine with one another. Your relationship becomes more and more fabricated over time, because you start wearing a mask because you're not voicing your opinions about what they may have done or something that you may see that they may do that may be unhealthy, or dynamics of the relationship that may be unhealthy. And what do you think about that? How important is it to have those hard conversations?
I think any friendship that has lasted has to have hard conversations. I think without the hard conversation doesn't always mean some big deep thing. The hard conversation for most people in friendship is just being honest. Sometimes you can compete with your friends. You know what I mean? You can just even compete with just who the happiest. You just try to, so now all the conversations are just updates on all the stuff we all doing and how great everything is. And so after a while, you can find yourself in this place where all the conversation is how great stuff is, and all the stuff we're doing and all the stuff we're working on. And so you'll find that there's less conversation about core things of how am I really? What's the stuff that's not working in my life? What's the stuff that's not going on? What's the stuff that sucks that I hate? What's the stuff I'm just depressed about and, ready to jump out the window? You'll have less and less of those conversations. So it's not sometimes always something even that the friend has done to you, but sometimes it can be that. But I think sometimes it's also just things going on in your life that you can share it with your friend, but you just don't. Now we just start having all of these, like you say, these kind of surface celebratory conversations where we're constantly celebrating some new thing, and we lose focus of just true authentic honesty and transparency. And I think if we do that more, you won't have a lot of room to have these big hard conversations that are kind of fouling up that haven't happened. I think they start piling up when it's just so much of just the surface fluff, everything's great all the time conversations, and then finally the big reveal comes, wow, I've really been going through this, or my job got cut, or we struggling financially, or whatever it could be that you just want to finally share. So I think that is how we get to not having these hard conversations. I think we can't have a good relationship without them. But I just want to speak more to how we get there. That's how I think we end up at this place where time has went on, and then the friend starts doing things and saying things that you don't like either, and then you file that away, and then that's how it builds up, and you look up and it's either a big fight, a fallout, or we just phase out.
Or it's this big thing where it's like, I had no idea you felt that way.
Exactly.
Because so much time has passed, and it's like you just get
hit
with like a bomb,
and
it can blow up. But on the other end of the one who may have to be addressed with the hard conversation, a good friend is able to hear what's going on and hear the individual's heart, whatever the concern may be.
That's true. And
not be offended and say, well, I'm going to walk away from this because of whatever case may be. No, that goes back to understanding. Recently, Corey had to have a conversation with me. We had
the first real conversation we ever had in almost 10 years. So that wasn't bad.
Yeah, but see the reason, and I'm gonna go to the conversation, but the reason why I believe that we haven't had to have too many hard conversations is because we're good at communicating with each other. So because we talk on a consistent basis, we're transparent with each other with what's going on. Where there's constant communication, there's less likely of a chance that there'll be misconceptions in the communication, where we're missing each other's concepts of what's trying to be communicated because we're constantly communicating. But there was recently actually, and we were just out. We went and met together for breakfast, and he's like, look, he had to prep me. And I do think that when it comes to those types
of me on the spot, he put me out there. No, that's good. No, this is good. This is a great example.
I do believe that when there are times where there needs to be hard conversations, there should be a prep. I think that you should give the person an opportunity to ready themselves to hear whatever it is that you have to give them. So he prepped me, and he pretty much told me, this last season was a very interesting season. There was a lot going on in his life. There was a lot going on in my life. We just had a baby. It was a lot going on. And Pastor Corey, he had a lot of achievements that he was accomplishing. He just released a new single. He sings, so he has a single you can actually get on Apple Music of a song called Surprise. So you can look up Corey Person, and you can find his single, and I encourage you to get it. But he just released a new single. They just bought a new church building. He's been pastoring for about
14 years.
14 years. So they just bought a new building, and he's like, Isaac, look, I know you got a lot of stuff going on, but you haven't even been by to see the building. You didn't. There were some things that I just missed because I got so caught up in my own world and life that I wasn't paying attention to some of my friends' life and accomplishments that they were doing. So the only thing you could really do in a situation like that is hear their heart, sincerely apologize, and make strides and efforts to be a better friend. To be the type of friend that that they may need, because different seasons require different things from friendships. And in that moment, I became aware of, man, I wasn't as good of a friend in this moment as I might have thought I was. And no, I'm not going to get offended by it. Even if it stings, I'm not going to get offended by it. I'm going to grow over it to become a better me, to become a better version of myself, so that I can be the type of friend that I know I would want to be, that I would want to have. So we're going to cover this last thing, and I think that it's important.
Well, let me chime in on that before we move on. I think that was good, but I want to jump in too, because I think when you listen to you kind of break that down, I think it goes back to kind of what we said, how you get there. And I think there were moments when I was probably thinking it and I just could have said something too. So again, it goes back to how we all have these times in our friendship. I call it where we kind of just start filing stuff away, and you just file it away and you don't say it. And so I think in your defense, because you mentioned how sometimes in friendships you drop these bombs. I think for me, it was difficult for me to have the conversation because we had never had to have a conversation like that. I had never felt like that before in the friendship. You know what I mean? So it was just, I think I didn't know how to have the conversation. I think that was part of it too. And so sometimes you're in situations where you may have something going on with your friend and you don't like it or you see it, and sometimes you just don't know how to say it. So I do think you should wait, you know what I mean? And so, because you don't want to say the wrong thing the wrong way. Back to what you said kind of with the prep and just still how I still didn't come crazy. I didn't come, ignorant in any way. I tried to still, I think you still have to put, a friend puts themselves in the other person's position. Even if you telling them something true or something hard or something whatever, you still put yourself in their shoes, even if you feel like they did you wrong. You gotta do that. And so I think that kind of helped it, you know what I mean, not be this big blow up. But I also think you, Isaac, we always tease Isaac, I would say he a prick. Isaac receive, stuff like that. Isaac don't care about stuff like that anyway, so it's easier for him to be like, oh, okay, my bad, all right, next, or something. But he didn't do that. I mean, he listened and he just kind of went on. Me being how I am, I'm the type of friend I always try, and Isaac could tell me if I'm wrong, I always try to be there in those moments. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I purposely don't have a lot of friends because I know the type of friend I am. So I want to be able, if I can be there physically, or if I can be there financially, or if I can be there in some kind of way whenever something's kind of going on in, their world, I'm going to try to do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's why I think I looked for it, in return, because that's how I am. And I always do that. So sometimes you also have to give your friends consideration too, because sometimes that may not be how they are. You know what I mean? So with me, this helped me realize too that it wasn't a lack of him being excited or whatever. It's some of that too may just not be his way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Of how he does it. So it was a good experience. I think it was good. Like I said, we handled it. I think that was good. A whole decade with just one kind of serious thing. I mean, we've had disagreements on stuff. We talk it out and we come right back. I mean, you guys have transitioned in church and we've had some deep conversations. I mean, launching churches, all of this stuff. We've had some serious, heated conversations, different of opinions, come right back, and we always say, okay, well, at the end of the day, I know my position is I'm gonna support my brother. So all right, you heard what I thought, but okay, now what's your decision? Okay, that's what you're doing. All right, I'm right here. Let's go. Yes, sir. So I think that's been a big one. Oh yeah.
I want to ask you this, because oftentimes in friendships, when you do have friends who may be advancing in certain areas, and there may be certain things that may be going on where they seem like, even in some areas, they may be doing a little better than you are. Or maybe their life may look a certain way. Aesthetically, and in your mind, sometimes it's very possible that you can be tempted to become covetous, or tempted to become jealous, or to become competitive, even in those types of relationships. How do you keep from competing with your friends?
So I'll give an example for me. I feel like I've always, and I can use me and Isaac's friendship. I'll use you, and then I'll use Pastor T. Because you guys are two real close friends. I mean, I got Jerome. I got about 3 good ones that are pretty close.
And these are all local leaders. Pastor T is another local leader. We both know him and are friends with him.
Yeah, really good friend of mine. So I'll use, like, the question is, how do I keep from competing? So for me, I feel like I've always been the friend that kind of need to kind of catch up anyway. Especially Isaac. Isaac's always been kind of out there. Isaac has the social media presence. He's kind of always been that one. So what I do for me, when I would feel that temptation to be like, oh man, I need to keep up, I had to determine this. There are things about Isaac and Pastor T that for me, I say this. I actually say I let them inspire me. So what I do is I look at it as, these are things, if they're excelling in this, like I'll use Pastor T for instance. So my guy, Pastor TK. TK is excellent with managing money, even beyond me. Now, I thought I was pretty good with money, but T manages money even to a degree where he's able to save huge sums of money, even with his church. So instead of me competing, what I do is I'm inspired by that. So what I had to do for me, I had to say, the areas where my friends kind of put fire under me, instead of me competing with them, I say, these are the areas where they're inspiring me. And then what I had to do for myself is kind of outline, well, what are the areas where I feel like I'm inspiring them? And I think when you do that, that helps take the room. I feel like it lets the air out of the tire that the enemy uses, because we all feel these moments of competition. We do. It's human. It's a lie to say you don't. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
If even with women, I see it with my wife sometimes with women. If one friend have a baby, the other friend want to have a baby.
Yeah.
Then they compete with the baby showers. Then they compete with, everything be just like, you can tell they excited for each other, but it's a little bit of a competition. I've seen that for years. So I think for me, to answer the question is how I cope with it, and how I found a way to not feel less and really not let the enemy make me jealous is I find areas where, I say, well, these are things they inspire me in. And so these are the things that make me, like I'll say, like Isaac, like your social media presence, the things you've done, you're out there, you speaking. I had a season where I couldn't really do that. I'm like, we got to get a building. I got all these other priorities. However, it's 2020. I know social media is where it's at. So I'm like, oh man, Isaac's he leading that, so I'm like, okay, he's right. And he told me for years, you got to do more, you got to do this. So to me, that was an area where I just put him in inspiration. I didn't want to compete with him on that. I feel like he has found his lane, and for me, it took me a while to figure out what my lane was, because I was like, well, I'm not a social media person. It's hard for me to just ride around in the car and talk about nothing. I was challenged with that, because that's kind of our culture. But once I took some time and really discovered what is my lane, and I took time to figure that out, then I was more comfortable doing it. You know what I mean? But you were an inspiration in that area. So Pastor T was an inspiration in the gym and the workout life. Me and you started working out, then our schedules switched, and then I was working out with Pastor T them all the time. But he inspires me in the fitness and the health world. And so I inspire him in some of the ministry things. He'll call me, hey bro, what you think about this? And we all bounce off of each other. So I think that's my answer. It's just inspiration over competition.
That's really good. And you have found your lane. So now he's doing like more videos on social media than I am now.
That's so funny.
He's found his lane. He's dealing a lot with relationships and marriage and just walking together with people. And he has a prayer line that he does where people all over the nation are tuning in, and he's actually found his groove. So it just shows what happens when you could turn something that could have been something that could have put a real sour taste in a relationship, and you turn it into inspiration, and as a friend, what you do is you get behind them and you push them and you motivate them and you make sure you say, look, I don't care what's going on. There's not going to be anything that comes in our relationship that's going to make us try to compete with one another, try to make us hate on one another, try to make us gossip about one another. Look, I want you to be great. I know you want me to be great. Let's be great together. You know, so that's really good. And just a shout out, he was talking about Pastor TK. That's Terrence Rogers, who pastors a church in Matson. Is it in Matson?
They're in Dalton, Faith on Fire.
Faith on Fire. Really, really good guy as well. And it's interesting that you brought him up because I think the final thing that I want to talk about is the importance as a pastor. I'm a pastor. I've been pastoring for a little over about 2.5 years now. You've been pastoring for quite some time. TK's pastoring now. How important is it for pastors to have friends? For pastors to have friends?
It's critical. Like, I think ICU level. Like on the hospital when they put you in ICU. I think it's critical for pastors to have friends. But I will say this. I think it's critical for pastors to have a certain type of friend.
Okay.
Because I don't think pastors should be, just because somebody's a pastor, should make them automatically, be your friend. I think there has to be, back to those core things I talked about, you need some, accountability. I think as pastors, we can have pastor talk, and there's a portion where we talk about church and ministry and all the grunts and all of the stuff and kind of encourage each other. But then there's some hard truth conversations, you know what I mean, that we have to have as pastors too. I mean, me and Pastor T has had some heated conversations about just differences that we have on how to approach things that may happen with the member, or discrepancy, or I may come off like I'm too, strict or too old school, or he may be like, oh, you trying to say I'm too lenient, and so we've had talks like this, and that's just an example. But it's so good to have these type of conversations and these type of friendships, because at the end of the day, I think without them, pastors, we're some of the loneliest people. And I can be honest when I say it, even with me, with my friendships, it has helped me avoid some of the loneliness. But I still have seasons of feeling alone as a pastor, because there is just, I think there is a lane of aloneness that comes with being a pastor, because there's some things, let's just be honest, even as pastors, we just can't share with each other. There's some confidential things. I don't care how close we are, how cool we are, I just can't talk to you about it. I gotta kind of just pray about that one, or I gotta deal with that. But then there's that area, or that place of things where I may want to talk, and if I know I got somebody, that my business not going to be on Facebook tomorrow, or find That's out important. Later on in a conversation that it was shared, or it gets back, things like that. In 10 years we've been friends, nothing I've ever told you's ever come back, and vice versa. I've never heard any of that. And we and you have some mutual friends where we've had, what do you do when like one friend fall out with one person but you still talk to the person? Like, how do you manage that?
Right.
We've had situations where we've had to manage that, where let's say I fell out with somebody but Isaac still talks to him, I don't want to put him in a situation where now he can't talk to them because, so being able to have a respect where there's a level of transparency between both relationships, or you don't feel in the middle, you know what I mean? And so it's a lot with having friends and managing. That's why I don't believe people should have a lot of friends, because I don't think you got the energy and time.
And to be quite honest, we're not going to go into this. We may have to do a part 2.
We do.
But there are different levels of friendships. We're not going to go into that this time. We may go into that next time. But I want to add that one of the things that I love about having, as a pastor, having friends that also pastor. And I don't think I have a whole lot of pastor friends. But having those friends that do pastor, you can talk about stuff to them that you may not be able to. You have an opportunity to be human. to be
Absolutely.
normal. You can talk to them and say, this Negro tripping, and don't worry about them judging you or anything like that, because on their end they like, yeah, and sister so and so tripping.
Crazy.
And you can just talk and be normal people, because for whatever reason people put this expectation on pastors as if they have to live beyond normalcy. They can't be regular people. So I really appreciate my friendship with Corey, with Pastor Corey, and we in this for the long haul.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. So listen, y'all. This comes to the end of it. We actually went a little over today, but this was some good content, and hopefully you heard something that you can use, you can utilize, you can share with someone.
Yes.
I'm going to have Pastor Corey come back on, and we're going to do a part 2, because there's a lot of things that we didn't have an opportunity to cover that I think would be good to cover. So listen, thank y'all so much for tuning in to Church Talk with Isaac. I hope y'all have a great day and work on becoming better friends. Don't be that best friend that's not a good friend, but work on being a good friend. All right, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Church Talk with Isaac. If you enjoy our content and benefit from this podcast, do me a favor and subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, family, and colleagues. I'm also on all social media platforms and would love to connect with you. You can also partner with us by visiting IsaacWatsonMinistries.com and clicking donate. Your partnership helps us to get the message of Jesus through Isaac Watson Ministries to the world. Talk to you soon.